My name is Vontrese Pamphile, and I am an assistant professor at George Washington University. I'm in the George Washington School of Business. And this is joint work that I'm doing with Katina Sawyer, who's also at the George Washington School of Business, and Christian Thoroughgood, who is at Georgia State University. So the main argument that our paper is making, or the main question it's asking, is about how can leaders promote diversity and inclusion among employees. So we know that companies, organizations want to promote diversity and inclusion, but it's hard to do so unless the employee base is bought in. So we're looking at leaders of organizations, particularly leaders in the diversity space, and how they talk about and promote diversity and inclusion. And so theoretically, we're looking at the different discursive frames for promoting social issues like diversity. And we look at two different kinds of frames. The first is a business case frame, where you motivate and justify supporting diversity because it's going to bring the company profit. It's an economic-based argument. The second frame is around fairness. So this positions diversity as the right thing to do for fairness and equity reasons. And what we do is we ask, well, how does the use of those different frames by leaders in the diversity space, specifically looking at chief diversity officers, which is a growing role in this space, and how does the use of those frames by these chief diversity officers impact the way that employees support diversity and inclusion initiatives at the organization? And what we find is when leaders use a business case frame, they garner less employee support than they do if they use a fairness frame. And the mechanism or the reason why that we rule in is around leader morality. So leaders are perceived to be less moral when they use the business case versus when they use the fairness case. That's really our main finding, and we are currently further developing that finding. In terms of theoretical contributions, our work is pushing scholarship on discursive frames of social issues by refocusing attention on the perception of the leaders who make those kinds of proclamations or justifications internally at companies. So we're refocusing attention on leaders. That's one of the key contributions we're making. And then we're also ruling in a new mechanism that can help explain why using the business case for social issues may backfire. So it may be detrimental. And so we rule in perceived leader morality as one of the key mechanisms that can help explain why using a business frame may actually be negative when we're talking about social issues at companies. In terms of practical contributions, I think our findings are suggestive that when leaders are making statements about diversity and inclusion, especially when those leaders have a special role overseeing it, so either they're on a diversity committee for an organization, they're in charge of diversity and inclusion, such as the chief diversity officer, or play a key role in the company, that they ought to think about how am I communicating around these social issues? If people hold a general understanding that these should be moral issues, am I actually doing a disservice by talking about them in a way that only highlights business benefits? And perhaps they can shift their framings to talking about maybe not only the business benefits, but leading with some of the fairness and equity motivations that might be involved with these issues as well. At least our findings suggest that that is a good way to go if you are hoping to garner support from an employee base. So it may be different depending on the stakeholders you talk to, but employees are responding better when diversity issues are talked about and framed in ways that are more related to fairness and equity.